this is one session you're not going to want to miss. We are here to talk about the investment opportunity in AR and VR. All 5 of us are active VCs in the space. I'm going to be acting as a moderator, and so at this point I'm going to pass off my microphone to Lucille, who's going to kick things off. We're going to have each of the VCs in the panel today talk about who they are and what their fund is, if they've made an investment so far in AR and VR. And then the point of this panel is really to help you all get inside of our head. So what do we think about the space? What are the opportunities? What are some of the ways that we vet deals? What are some of the challenges we see startup founders face? And how do we really see the market coming together? And so if you are a startup founder or an entrepreneur, or you just really want to get a sense as to what investors are thinking right now about AR and VR, this is the place to be. So Lucille, if you want to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure, thank you very much, Tom. Hello everybody. Please, if you are a founder in the seed phase, just stay a little longer, at least also take some time to meet me after the panel. So I'm an investment manager within the high-tech Gründerfonds fund in Germany. The fund is a public-private partnership where the German government is the biggest investor, but we also have 30 investors from the industry on board. In total 900 million under management, and well, many participations, around 400. We have a couple of investments indeed in the VR industry, and still looking at opportunities. We are tech focused, we are sector agnostic, so no matter what the application of the technology, we are looking at companies that have an unfair advantage on the technology side of things. And so we are active in the seed phase. As said, companies should be younger than 3 years old, and another couple of criteria, but I'll be looking forward to meet you.
Awesome.
Also after the panel.
That's great. Jacob?
Hello. So I'm Jacob Loewenstein from Samsung Next. I'm based in New York. So Samsung Next is Samsung's software and services innovation arm. I work on business development and strategy and also help our investment side. We've made a number of investments in VR and AR. I think the ones maybe most pertinent to the forum here would be 8i, so working on volumetric capture and holograms, and also spatial, which is working on the UI and almost like the browser for AR. And before Samsung Next, I was a grad student at MIT and ran the VR AR community there. And I'm just really excited to talk to all of you. Samsung Next explores investing from seed in all stages. And so if you are a startup here, come and talk to us because we want to understand what you're working on.
Awesome. Herbert?
So hi, I'm Herb. I'm with Vito Ventures, which is a new venture capital firm located in Munich. We consider ourselves as European investors. So none of our rules are basically fixed, but Europe is a focus, early stage, B2B oriented, and well, I said we're not long on the market, but it happens to be that the companies we invested in all have a very strong technological core and are set to form, in a sense, categories. They create categories in itself, and that's basically what we look at, like companies that are very early in new technology-driven markets or provide core technologies to enable new products and businesses.
Okay, and Johan?
Yes, my name is Johannes from Borries. I'm managing partner of Unternehmertum Venture Capital. I'm actually 7 years ago, I was in the same position than you startups here and pitching in front of VCs. Now we are pitching in front of you. So why should you come to Unternehmertum Venture Capital? We are a second fund. We are experienced VCs focusing on B2B tech. Our uniqueness is that we are part of Unternehmertum. It's a leading innovation center in Europe, and we work together. We have partners, 50 corporates, even more. So it's an SAP, it's a Siemens, it's a BMW, you name it, and we can provide context to all these corporates, which usually could be your customers. So we're also early stage investor. We are looking at a large market, as most VCs, but also a good and solid technology, and with a good team. We typically invest 500 to 1 million in the seed round and up to 4 or 5 million in Series A.
And you know me as the co-producer of AWE, but Ori and I also run a fund called Super Ventures, which is based in San Francisco. Super Ventures is an early stage fund dedicated to augmented reality, and we are focused on startups that are building fundamental technologies such as developer tools, hardware components, and also solutions within the enterprise, as well as those that are focused on social collaboration. And so if you are an early stage startup, we're all here afterwards to meet with you, and also in the agenda tomorrow will be an investor networking event, which you will want to take note of in the breakout room, so make sure you mark that on the agenda. So let's get right into the conversation, and you can use slido.com, hashtag AWE2017 to get some questions going. But I'd love to first start off with, let's just identify some of the areas of interest that you guys are all looking at. What's hot on your radar today? What are some of the deals that you're looking for in terms of technology, solution, size? Describe that to me.
We've done in the past a little bit of entertainment application, or invested in companies in entertainment for entertainment application. Was not so successful, so we're still open to that. As said, we are not really sector agnostic, but we think that today a lot can be done in the industry, or can be changed in the industry thanks to the AR technology. So all thematics from remote maintenance, inspections, and everything that basically comes around the digitalization of the industry generally is of interest to us.
Okay. In enterprise, industrial, AR or VR? Or are you leaning more towards AR solutions at this time? Or
both.
Both.
So we have also made very good experience with VR, especially actually in the retail industry, but both. Yeah.
Okay. Jacob?
So I think we tend to focus more on consumer applications right now. We're more focused on AR than VR, but it's never necessarily exclusive to one or the other. And I think that we're particularly focused on technologies, and this is to Herbert's point a bit, that we think are either core to unlocking and building the ecosystem, or applications that we could see rising as the ecosystem rises. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the AR Cloud article that Ori and Matt from Super Ventures have talked about, because I think it puts the finger on a lot of the hot button issues that we're thinking a lot about, which is for AR to truly exist in the form that we all envision it existing, which is persistent and cross-platform and geospatially anchored. There's still a lot of work to be done. And so we've been looking a lot at tech around 3D sensing, algorithmic understanding of environments, the infrastructure of mapping the world, the infrastructure of storing that data and serving it, for example, is one key area. And we're open to vertical specific applications, but again, you talk to a lot of companies. I think we're more product focused than service focused right now, and so the companies that we would look at in those areas would need to show like robust product growth, rather than sort of being a consulting business or something like that.
Okay.
Cool. So basically agree with that. We just did an investment in a VR collaboration company, which is here. It's VR On. So that's something that we really like. It's, you mentioned it also. You look into collaboration, but here it's in a B2B context and in virtual reality. And that's something where we feel that, in a sense, the hardware platform is going to be established, and we see it in the shipment of the hardware headsets. It's much more advanced, like the deployment of this platform, than in the AR space, where much needs to be done on a core technology part. And on that platform, you are early, basically, if you come with a neat enterprise software into business, into markets. And well, that's what we did with VR On, and yeah, I think there are many other companies following that pathway.
Okay.
Yes, so we are focusing more on the industrial applications and everything that makes them happen. I think there's a lot of money invested in devices. We all know the devices, and they are large players with very deep pockets. So we look now, I think that the market is in a stage where there is a lot of pieces, or maybe It's a roadmap to have them in 2-3 years if the next versions of the HoloLenses come out or whatever. And now actually is the time to really to bring them together and target very specific verticals, but that are still large enough to build product companies in them. So if you have something like that, taking it together, I think there's still a lot of work to do, don't get me wrong. It's still a lot of work to make it really a product in a very specific market, and that's something we would invest in.
And so when we take a look at deals and startup opportunities, market timing is a big thing. And so what I'm hearing here is the majority of the focus is on B2B. So it seems to be in the enterprise. So let's have a conversation a little bit about how we see the market in AR and VR. And I know we can slice and dice this in so many ways, but just on the whole, is the market opportunity in the enterprise now, and are we giving up on the consumer for a bit? How do you see that? Because we're not hearing a lot of consumer enthusiasm between the five of us. They told us to keep it fun too. Remember?
Yeah, sure. No, I think consumer is great, but the devices are just not at the price range where you really can go into large consumer. Then you have on the other side the Apples and so on that have some augmented reality. We will see capabilities, but actually I think the case is now where you can really save money, make processes more efficient, do simulation in VR, which you cannot do training, is really something where is a strong need in the industry. And so I think actually a consumer, I don't know exactly about the markets and timing, there might be also possibilities, but the consumer device is actually driving now the industrial. It's a little bit like we saw in 3D printing. Everyone first wanted to have, oh, there's a 3D printer and do it for your consumer. Didn't really work. Now, but what happened, all the engineers bought one and put it into the industry, and now they work with it. And I think it's the same with the HoloLenses, so they all play with it, and wow, that's cool, we can do it in an industrial world. And that's at least what we see. And also consumer electronics, honestly, there are not that many good consumer electronics companies in Germany, and it's very difficult to build a global company in consumer electronics out of Germany.
And I think the readiness to pay is also a different one in the industry, right? I mean, if you are really solving a problem or shortening processes with your VR, AR technologies, gain time or decrease cost enormously, then the readiness to pay is just a different one. I think the entry to market is a little bit easier in that sense. Just want to make one sentence on the devices. So we have a hardware team within High-Tech Gründerfonds, so if there is any founders also working on the devices, even if we know there are very big players out there with deep pockets, we are still looking at also hardware, pure hardware innovation.
I was going to say that the ideas are good when it literally lights up the room when you're talking, so there's that. Also means we can see when people are leaving blue backpack.
And I kind of feel like now we're like on HD TV, where before we were
I'm like,
not.
can I moisturize? But I will disagree slightly with the utmost respect, which is to say that I'm very excited about consumer applications. And Samsung is too, right? We are a consumer electronics company, and so we're excited about AR that makes the everyday life of our average consumer better. I can't disagree with a lot of what's said, which is like an enterprise has a higher willingness to pay. I think you see more willingness to explore frontier technology when it solves, a real pain. Investors always talk about, we want the painkiller, not the vitamin. But at the same time, I do think that there's going to be increasing awareness amongst consumers of AR this year. You're going to see a ton of apps that aren't very good, that are like hammers searching for nails and people just playing around with this for no reason. But I think there's a general cultural context, which is that consumers are becoming more and more willing to look through their phone out onto the world. There's a greater and greater hunger for contextual information, and there's a greater and greater desire for consumers to interact with other people through some context in the real world. And as that hunger grows and as that need grows, I have no doubt that AR is going to become a crucial piece of solving that problem for a lot of people. So what precisely would that look like? It's hard to say. I don't have a completely concrete thesis that guarantees what the major consumer innovation is going to be, but I have ideas. And if the hunger was such that a scavenger hunt game the time was now for it and AR enabled that to become more interesting, then there could be lots of other applications. And now the time where you're going to see the revival of something like Tamagotchi, because people are, I mean, you can laugh, but like, why did that take off 20 years ago? Well, maybe there is a desire for people to explore, you know, some sort of nurturant part of their personality or to teach that to children. And now you look today and you say, is now the time for that to reappear? And oh wait, there's a technology that's going to allow people to experience a similar phenomenon upgraded for our modern sensibilities and expectations on hardware that more and more children have in their pockets. I'm not saying that's what it is, but it could be, and I think that's one of our jobs at Samsung Next is to try and understand, you know, what those possibilities are, because otherwise you only see them in hindsight, and then you've missed the opportunity.
Right.
I think this is massive. Like talking about timing with the opening up of ARKit and ARCore, and making developer tools and AR applications available to billions of people. This is massive in terms of timing. And I think everybody who is active in that space should really follow next year and see what kind of apps come up on the market, what is successful, and take concepts like, I mean, you may name Tamagotchi, that were extremely successful, and reimagine this in this AR context. The other thing with timing and B2B, the B2B context, is simply that the industry is used to kind of virtual reality or technologies that have cost millions of euros, and now you have with consumer hardware and engines, gaming engines, tools at your hand where you have a cost cut of orders in magnitude, and that just pays off, and from there it diffuses in other industries.
Okay, so I want to talk specifically about mobile AR, ARKit, ARCore, and similar, in terms of how you are assessing these deals, because ultimately now the technology for the most part has been commoditized. And is this not just a mobile play, you know? So, you know, if someone comes up with a ARKit social app, is it not just a social app with an AR feature, or are you treating it differently? So let's talk a little bit about how you're assessing these mobile AR deals, and then I'd love to hear just a little bit about what you're seeing further upstream with just AR and VR in general, to help, you know, the startup founders understand what they may need to prepare for Series A, and so on. So those are the two last questions, and then I'm going to go into the audience, and I can see you now. So this is a very critical moment for you to get into slido.com, get your questions loaded up. Let's get that up and ready. But how are you guys assessing these mobile AR deals when they come across your desk? Who wants to take this? Jacob looks hungry.
Always. I mean, listen, there's the standard metrics and criteria that we use in terms of trying to understand the quality of the team, the differentiation of the technology, how competitively protected is it, and I think your point about ARKit and ARCore and commoditized tech is an interesting one, because to some extent, the tip of the spear in terms of core AR tech and SLAM for mobile has been commoditized in the form of ARKit and ARCore. But as your colleagues have also helped the world understand, is there's a lot more to that. But I think I'm going to come back to defensibility, and I'll make that like my thesis point for this, which is that I think a lot of the times we see a lot of wonderful ideas, but I think you have to remember about the ecosystem nowadays is like, okay, so we're children of the 90s and the early 2000s, and we've seen a lot of really great disruption. We've also seen the growing awareness of disruption, and we've seen kind of a standard playbook emerge in terms of how to defend against it. And so a lot of the big companies who are very strategically positioned to win in sort of these technological battles are not just trying to do so internally, but like, you know, they're making bets. Like, I mean, Samsung, we have an innovation group. We're making bets, we're working with entrepreneurs, and so the likelihood of something completely sideswiping us is unlikely. And so on the one hand, I applaud the ambition of startups who want to try and own key pieces of the stack, because that's great ambition, and you know, every now and then it happens. But you know, on the other hand, you do see companies sometimes that are better positioned than a startup to own a piece of tech, because you know, more and more, for example, with AR, we're seeing certain pieces of fundamental tech depend on who owns the most data, or the most, you know, differentiated or variety set of data. And if you're a startup and you're saying, like, if I'm trying to train an algorithm to beat out an algorithm that another company's producing for the purpose of AR, it's going to be hard for you to replicate that foundational capability that a big company might already possess. So if I give like one thesis point on this, it's think about the defensibility, because the thing that, you know, we don't want for you to happen to an entrepreneur is for you to work, put your heart and soul into something that you're just never positioned to be able to win in the first place.
That's great advice.
So yeah, I'm not a, I mean, we don't look into consumer AR topics, more the B2B side. But what I could add to this, so if I were to build a consumer AR thing app, I also agree that there's little chance that you can build something independent of those big players. But if it comes to software or applications that run on your devices, basically. But I think there are many things that some people are not aware of, like you know, blockchain or token models where you have mixed realities. I mean, what's happening to the digital part of the real world, right? I mean, who owns it? Who has rights to sell this? Can some government, whatever, actually decide? I don't know. I mean, is it just the one who is first to monetizing on this, to distributing basically physical space, to build an independent platform? This is sick, and I think this can evolve a part of the players like Samsung, Google, etc. And we see it in the Decentraland, in the virtual worlds. This is extremely exciting. So that's, I would go for that if I would need to build something.
I think there are going to be also new business models that are going to just
absolutely, yeah.
Thanks to this technology, see the light, and based on this business model, I think it's completely possible that a huge company like Samsung also get disrupted. I mean, Apple got disrupted by Spotify, I think, only based on a business model. Yeah, so I would also then look at the business model, how this is basically set up.
Okay. Johan, anything to add?
Not really. I mean,
okay.
Honestly, with these mobile things, maybe I've seen too many things fail, yeah? But I really think where can really AR, VR bring added value, also for the consumer. And honestly, if ever I saw Pokemon, first augmented reality, great, my kids played it, but you know what? They turned off the augmentation, right? They just played it without have the display. So it was not an augmented reality, it was a GPS game where the location played.
Yeah.
So I think we really have to think again, it's a nice way to explore and do things, but where's the real value, either for industries or also for consumers?
Okay, I think that's good advice. So,
can I have to say one more quick?
Okay.
So, and maybe it's because my body thinks it's like 1 in the morning, and therefore I feel the need to be like more provocative than necessary. But like, I would almost just say that like, while you would think that you have these investors who are working for technology companies or companies that are interested in technology, like technology should be the first thought. But to some extent, like I don't care about technology. It's not the first point. I'm ultimately thinking about problems that need to be solved or cultural developments that dovetail with technological developments. And so like the thing is, you shouldn't be thinking like, okay, like what is the killer VR or AR app going to be, right? Like the question is, why is VR becoming interesting now? Why is the technology developing as rapidly as it is now? Well, it's developing because people have interest in it. Why do people have interest in it? Well, there may be greater desire now for people to escape in immersive worlds, for example. That could be one thesis. And then you should run with that if that's what guides you. But again, I said it before, like this hammer searching for a nail thing is so prevalent, which is like, you're absolutely right. Like, so many AR plays are just mobile plays now. And so the idea that because this is in AR, it's suddenly going to be interesting or more worthwhile to the consumer is inane, frankly. And so the real question is like, what is it that people have always wanted to do where technology has essentially let them down or it hasn't been able to fulfill their ambitions in that regard? And how does AR begin to bridge the gap? And so I don't think there haven't been a ton of signs of what that means yet. There are some, like, of course, AR apps that are going to become immediately successful, like IKEA's AR app. Like, of course, people want to see what things look like in the real world.
Right.
I'm willing to bet that there's probably going to be a huge cosmetic AR app because trying things on and not having to travel is such a pronounced problem. So what are other problems where AR finally helps bridge the gap and we're backwards from there? Because if you're going technology first, you're going to end up walking into a door.
And maybe we need this hammer, searching for a nail type phase because it's just new, and we forget that we've been through this so many times before, and so we had this when mobile came out, where we had apps that just made no sense, and so it kind of informs the ones that are looking to do the right thing in what not to do, and you learn what to do. And so I have 5 minutes left. I really do want to take one question. Upvote the one that you want. One's really winning, so hopefully you guys can prepare for this one. But I think we're all on the early stage side. So if we can maybe talk about what we're seeing, on the Series A side, what are the Series A investors looking at? How are they evaluating the deals in order to get them done?
No, I'm happy to do that. So we are seed and Series A.
Okay, fair enough.
So Series A, you usually want to see, well, some revenues. The revenue is not that important. It's more like having really a product that some people, again, we're talking about the pain or the need in the market, to understand the need in the market, and here is the first product. And then Series A money is usually used to ramp up your sales. That's it, okay? It's usually not used to do product development. That you will have a first product and a second product and a third, yeah, that's clear. But you need to have a first product, and you have first pilot customers you can basically call and say, how was the product? So that's, I think, is the main difference between early stage and a little bit later stage.
And those pilot customers they're potentially going, if you're on a SaaS model, for example, going to be moving on to that SaaS model. So it's not services work for these guys. It's more your product testing a business model that's just about to convert.
Exactly. I mean, to be honest, with all the business model, I mean, there's also trying out in the end. Again, if there's large pain, they will pay. If they pay it in a SaaS, if they pay it at one time, it does not really matter that much, right? So that, and you will optimize your business model going through and maybe different customers. In the end, they need someone really has to pay for it an amount, and you have done it a few times maybe. And now you need the money really to ramp up your sales, because there are so many other customers out there.
Okay, anybody else have something to add?
Yeah, maybe one. Our experience with regards to Series A is that actually most of you're doing early stage as well. That's why you're thinking like this. Yeah, the business model can be adjusted, but the feedback that we get from the portfolio when we make Series A's or we organize Series A's for our portfolio we invested in seed, is that actually the business model has to be a little bit proven. I mean, quite proven.
Okay.
So not only neat and I mean, this is the most. What we get mostly. Are
you finding that the AR/VR deals are no longer getting a free pass because they're AR/VR on the Series A side? And so if their business model is SaaS, then they're being looked at as another SaaS business. I'm seeing some shaking heads. So is this the truth, or is there still some really great technology plays based on AR and VR alone?
I mean, in the VR space, as we invested, it's basically enterprise software, and we consider it to be enterprise software, and there you apply certain metrics that are well known, and everybody can Google them and figure out what kind of valuation you can think of and ranges. So we think in terms of a classical model, and that's it for that space, which is established. If it's about technology, and maybe you answer this, I mean, you were saying you're looking into core technologies. I think this is a different game. So there you don't look into this is SaaS, and we look with the glasses of a SaaS model, but with something very different, probably.
Right.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think if we're looking at a core technology, I mean, you're ultimately looking at everything and then weighing things differently. And I think for a core technology, you can recognize that if the business will fundamentally have a strategic advantage because it has the best or derives it tech earliest, then that gives more flexibility in your business model, right? Because you have more power vis-a-vis whoever your consumer is. If that's less the case and the business strategy becomes more critical, again, I think we apply the criteria that we would apply to another SaaS company. And it's also partially why when talking to us, and it's very popular now, and I completely understand why, to hear from a VR AR company that like we do a lot of consulting business, but our ambition is to become a product business. And if I were in that entrepreneur's shoes, I would probably do the same, because it's like a bootstrapping mentality of like, I want to stay alive. But the problem is if we're then going to evaluate you based on what you want to become, then we need to use that rubric, which is to say like, do you have a product? Do you have experience selling that product? And I think that is the challenge, which people have the ambitions, but a lot of times they don't have the plan that matches those ambitions. They're not ready to sort of put themselves in our shoes and think back and say, well, if I were Jacob, do I feel comfortable that all the risks have been mitigated given what we're ultimately trying to do? And so if I give one piece of advice, it's like, if it really comes down to if your technology isn't going to be the core and your business strategy is going to be more important, make sure it's airtight.
So, and with Jacob just answered the Slido question with valuation, but we have like 5 seconds left. So Jacob already gave some advice to founders, if I was Jacob. So if you were Jacob, everybody, the founder, Let's go down, starting with Lucille. Keep it really brief, like punchy, 5 seconds. Like, what's your biggest advice to a founder out in the audience right now?
I would say don't fake it until you make it. It's a US way of doing things that doesn't work in Europe. No, just be honest. Show us your vision, your plan. That's the most important thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would want to disagree with you on some sort of like jingoistic grounds, but I think, yeah, I would say like, no, but yeah, put yourself in our shoes, which is at the end of the day, you know, if we're giving you money, we want to make sure that the risk is controlled. And so yes, sell us on the vision, but also be prepared to answer what is everything that could go wrong and how are you going to prevent that or why will that not happen to you? And if you can answer all those questions, then you've done a lot of our work for us and it makes it easy to have that conversation.
That's great. Herbert?
Yeah, that's true. So if you get along without a VC, go get along without a VC. I think that's a good advice. But in general, I think it's extremely important and helpful to use events like this to network with investors, because they can help you if it's just in discussions, talking about the model, or you know, meet them 2 or 3 times, and then you're kind of having a relationship, and they may help you to get very valuable contacts without placing an investment, basically.
Right.
So networking is really important.
That's great. Johan?
So I think aim far and go in small steps, meaning, yes, you need to have a vision. You need to show us you're changing not the whole world, but a market. And therefore, it's a big market, and you will be important. But on the other side, we all know that takes time. That takes 7, that takes 10 years, okay? Don't rush it on the other side. So we need to see then small steps where you basically follow the money and find then the right way. You will not build a $1 billion company in 2 or 3 years. So we know that. Take your time, but show us a vision and also the way how you get there.
That's great. So guys, don't forget that we have our investor networking event tomorrow, but we are already late to head into the reception, so perhaps some of us will be there. So be sure to use this opportunity to network with us, ask some of the questions we didn't get to, and a big round of applause for everybody here on stage. Thank you.